Welcome. I'm gonna first touch on City Builder Prologue 2, supply curve for a firm. Let's jump into that. Same rules applies. I'm gonna go in easy mode for now. Please refer to the previous workshops if you have any question about the different modes, the different scenario type, and any other housekeeping item that you may be wondering about. Very well, so here we are with the game. In this level, you're gonna be again impersonating our character, our main character, and the objective here is gonna be to make production decisions. In the previous scenario, we have made production decision regarding production of blueberry or redberry, and the choice there was really about how many of them we should produce. We would be looking at the cost of production, how much money we would have to spend to make these things, and the revenue, the money we could make by selling it. It was a very simple market. We were the only producers in the market, and the choice was just how many units of this product we should produce to maximize our profit. Very well. I'm not gonna spoil too much of this level. Please chat with the characters in the world as much as you can to figure out what's going on in the city. The big change in this level is gonna be that we are gonna have a lot of entrepreneurs that are competing with you in selling the product. This is a big change because it introduces the concept of competition within the game. Let me walk a little bit this way. Please have a chat with everybody. In this particular level, we are gonna be helping this individual entrepreneur here to make their productive decisions. You can have a look at the market here, and you can literally see that we are waiting on this entrepreneur who has this question mark for us. So the market is waiting on them to make up their mind. The name is Herman. And that's where the market is frozen, waiting for this person to make a choice. You can see also that we've got a lot of supply. Now that we have a lot of producers in this economy, we end up having 30 units as quantity supplied and only 21 quantity demanded. So consumers here are seemingly asking less than what producers are willing to produce at this specific price of $5.73 per redberry. So this is the situation in this level. In the previous level that we explored in week 2 of this program, I would be telling this entrepreneur exactly how many red berries to produce. The way I would be doing it would be to first analyze the production function. So say if I want to produce one red berry, here one, I need one worker, a worker cost $0.50. You can see it here as well, the price of a worker, $0.50. So the total cost would be $0.50. And how much money can I make out of red berries? Oh, $5.72. And if you remember, the main educational component of that previous scenario was just to figure out, given these values of total costs and total revenues, what was the optimal production decision for an entrepreneur, like the one for a firm, like the one we were studying at the time. You can see that as I click here, I can preview what it would be, my cost, total cost, if I produced more red berries, and what also would be the effect of my revenue. Very well. Now, in that particular economy, in the previous scenarios, there was only one producer, and there was no need to worry about price changes. But in this scenario here, we've got a lot of competitors. We have other firms producing red berries, and we have a situation where there is more supply than demand. So some of these producers are going to end up producing something that they might not be able to sell to consumers directly. So what would happen in a situation like that, where you have a market with competing firms, and there is excess supply. There is more supply than demand. Well, you can see it represented here in this little scene, which I always find really refreshing and funny. This entrepreneur is saying, oh, I'm setting a certain price, and this guy is saying, well, you know what, I'm gonna undercut you, offer the same good at a slightly lower price, and so on and so forth. Oh, I'm even lowering it even more. This idea of undercutting and competition putting downward pressure on price is what we observe in the real world. We have individual firms that are competing by trying to set a price that is competitive. And if they end up in a situation where they cannot sell their goods, you would expect that they, in fact, cut their price to become more competitive and steal some of the customers from the competition. And that is exactly what we expect in a perfectly competitive market, in a free market economy where the prices are set through the decision of individual buyers and sellers. In this example, that's exactly what we are going to do. We are going to have a centralized market, which is this toggle here. A decentralized market, a free market, that is gonna work in a similar way. It's gonna try to find a price in the case in which, for example, there is too much supply. The market is gonna tend through competition forces to reduce the price, so that as the price gets reduced, there is less incentive for producers to produce, so the supply reduces a little bit, and there is more incentive for consumers to purchase, so the demand goes up, and so the difference between demand and supply becomes smaller. This, as I was telling before, could be driven by simple competitive forces. Each entrepreneur, each producer is just trying to undercut the other as long as there is an excess supply. When there is perfect balance, there is no need for, and demand equals supply, there is no need for anyone to reduce further the price, because every seller is able to sell everything that they are producing, so everybody's happy. It could also be the case that we are in a different situation where the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied. In that case, there is excess demand, there is too much demand. And the normal thing that would happen in that case is, for example, that seller would be willing to offer a higher price to make sure they get the good. If there is a lot of demand and not so much supply, you're going to have a lot of customers that are going to be left without a good, and so they will be willing to pay more to purchase that good. Just an example, a silly one. I tried to purchase a PlayStation 5 a few months ago, and just couldn't find it in the market, so I had to go on eBay and buy one from there at a much higher price. In that case, if you have tried to purchase a PlayStation 5, you probably know how this is going. There is way more demand than supply. And what people do, well, consumers are willing to pay an extra price, increase what they're willing to pay for in order to make sure they get the product. And I think I ended up, based on that same concept, paying $200 or $300 more for that PlayStation 5. If there weren't any excess demand, if Sony would have been able to produce enough units to meet demand, I would have saved $300. But as a consumer, I was willing to pay it, and so I was willing to take that increase in the market price. In all situations where there is an excess supply or an excess demand, the free market, the perfectly competitive market, adjusts itself by changing the price. So in this scenario, different from the previous one, the price might keep on changing. Cycle after cycle, the price would change. And of course, as soon as the price of the thing that you are selling changes, then you would have to do all the tedious calculation again. So suppose you are deciding how many red berries to produce, 1, 2, 3, or 4, right? Just click here to look at the total cost and total price. You might decide, for example, say, hypothetically, it's not necessarily the right choice, but let's say I decide that it's optimal for me in terms of maximizing my profit to produce 5 red berries. Well, this is based on the cost of worker, which is fixed in this level. So this is it's not going to change, just to keep things simpler for now. But the price at which you can sell red berries, for the reason that I just explained, might be changing market cycle after market cycle. If there is an excess supply, like in this case, we were probably going to expect the market to try to reach a balance by reducing the price of blueberry. And if that happens, you're going to have to redo the calculation all over again. Maybe 5 is no longer the optimal amount. And I'm saying it again, 5 is just a hypothetical quantity. Maybe it's a different quantity. Maybe it's 7. But as soon as that red berry price changes again, oops, you have to change your quantity again, and so on and so forth. This could be incredibly tedious, and it doesn't make for a good educational experience, let alone for a good video game experience. So what we have come up with is what we call an idea system. The idea system is basically a way for you to create your own robots, your own bot, your own artificial intelligence. You are gonna talk to the entrepreneur in here, and you are gonna tell him what strategy to use. We really like this concept because instead of you manually having to find the right quantity to be produced when the price changes, you're going to have this character, your bot, do it for you. But you have to program the bot using the correct concepts, the correct intuition, or if you want, the correct algorithm. Economics, it's all about algorithms and decision making. So this is actually a very good representation of how economic models are thinking about the world. Let me, without further ado, after this quite long introduction about excess demand and excess supply, let me just get close to this entrepreneur here, and let's see what they have to say. The entrepreneur is saying, we are going to adjust our production to try and maximize profit. Okay, that's the objective here, that's okay. At the start of each production cycle, we start from 0 production. This is the classic marginal decision-making approach. This entrepreneur will start from 0 production of his cycle, and then they will try to figure out if they should increase production. Should I produce the first unit? And then should I produce the second unit? Should I produce the third unit? Doing this marginal decision-making all along. Okay, so let's do it, right? All right, first step of this, you see that this entrepreneur is telling you that they are currently producing 0 red berries, and that's fine because that's exactly what we expected them to start with, 0. They're also telling us that the cost of production is increasing the more we produce. That's not a surprise, because if you click on the production function, just access it here, you see that for 1 red berry I need 1 worker. To produce 3 red berries, I need 2 workers. But then look at that. For 4 red berries, I need 4 workers. And for 5 red berries, I need 7 workers. For 6 red berries, I need 10. And for 7, I need 14. This is increasing more and more. The additional red berry is becoming more and more costly to produce in terms of the labor that you need to put into that, which also translate into the concept of increasing marginal cost. The cost of producing the additional red berry is getting higher and higher because you have to hire more and more workers and pay more and more wages. At the moment, the cost of producing the next unit, so this is the marginal cost, is which basically is the marginal cost of producing the first unit, right? So first unit, you need 1 worker, so the extra cost that you are putting in is half a dollar, is currently lower than the market price. Yeah, that's right. The market price for red berries is 5.73. So the marginal cost, the extra cost of producing the first red berry is actually lower than the market price at which you can sell the red berry, which is the benefit that the producer is experiencing. So marginal cost less than marginal benefit. What should we do? Well, you could shut down production, just say, cut it off, this is no good, stop it. Or you could increase production, or you could start production without increasing, start without increasing production. In this case, you would start with 0 product, and that would be the end of it. Or you could, as we said, increase production. Now, the cost-benefit principle suggests that you should always take the action if the extra cost is lower than the extra benefit. In this case, the extra cost is 0.5, the extra benefit is 5.7, hence cost is lower than the benefit. We should take that action. So we should increase production, go produce that extra unit. Let's do that. Very good. You can see that it was like formulating, producing more, up to the point where something has changed in the condition in the market. And now the cost of producing the next unit is actually $6. Whereas the benefit, at which, you can, so the price at which you can sell it is still 5.7. And is now the case that the marginal cost, 6.5, is greater than the marginal benefit, 5.7. We are at the point where we are producing actually 20 red berries, which is a lot. So we are roughly at this point. And the extra one will cost us 6.5 to produce, giving us only a marginal benefit of 5.7. So we should definitely stop increasing production. Cost-benefit principle is saying, should we take the extra action? No, because the extra benefit is actually lower than the extra cost. So I'm just going to say, start without increasing production any further. So keep in mind that this is a recursive algorithm. So every time the entrepreneur is going to find itself in a situation where the marginal cost is less than the marginal benefit, they're going to increase production. And every time they're going to find themselves in a situation where instead the marginal benefit is lower than the marginal cost, so the marginal cost is bigger in this case, they are going to decide to start production without any further increase in the output produced. So this will constantly go on in the background. You're going to see that they're going to constantly do this reasoning, following your algorithm. So after this, you can just let them go and do whatever you want, and they're going to keep on doing the type of decision that you instructed them to do. This is really my way to teach you how a supplier is making decisions using marginal decision making in a world where the price is constantly changing. The producer is also telling me, look, my budget is now, production budget is 12.5, but really the cost for me of producing what I need to produce, it's much lower. So is this something that, so should I adjust the production budget? And we have only one choice here. We wanted to keep it really simple for you because let's have a look at this. In this level in particular, we are introducing the concept that producers are also consumers. Now, why did we do that? Well, in real life, if you talk with an entrepreneur, they are clearly thinking about their company and trying to make good decisions for the company. But the end goal is to make some money so that they can also enjoy life and consume. Hence, if you want a full model of society, you need to introduce the concept that we are introducing in this level, which is the concept of consumption also for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are maximizing their profit because they want to use that money for their own happiness, for their own consumption. Hence, it's important for the entrepreneur to say, well, if my production budget is relatively small, I want to make sure that I'm not keeping too much money for production, and instead I free up money for consuming goods myself. The role, you can read this dialogue here for more information, but the role of getting consumption to the entrepreneur is going to be performed by this consumer. So this consumer is associated with this producer, and they are going to buy money with the budget that the entrepreneur leaves them. And what you're going to do just here is going to be just adjusting the budget so it perfectly matches what is needed for production. So your consumer agent, this person here, will be able to go and use the extra money that you made to purchase goods from the economy itself. Okay, so we're going to just say adjust the budget. Now, I want you to really follow this closely, because as soon as I click this, things are going to happen really fast. The market equilibrium, the free market is going to make its adjustment. And notice one thing. At the moment, we have 30 quantity supplied and 21 quantity demanded. This is excess supply. The market is going to naturally create competition and will put downward pressure on the price of a red berry. So you're going to see that the market is going to reduce the price of red berry, and that will most likely reduce the willingness to produce of the producer and increase the willingness to consume of the consumer, which will reduce the excess supply. But this may happen really, really quickly. So keep an eye on this. You are also going to see here that you're going to see it's going to happen very quickly because the computer can do it really quickly. But we are going to go through every single supplier, and we are going to process their ideas, their automation. These people are also automated, and they have their own algorithm, similar to the one you just set for your own producer. And you know, these consumers also have their own algorithm, which is really simple at this point, because you just spend all your budget in red berries. That's a very simple decision. And this worker also have a little algorithm, also super simple. They're just gonna decide to work all day. We are not even gonna worry about the leisure versus work decision that we are gonna see next week. So very simple, but you're gonna see here in this part of the screen, we're gonna pop in all those agents' decisions. We are gonna say, we are processing the thoughts of this agent. We are processing the thoughts of this agent. And by changing their decisions, we are gonna see changes to the demand and supply in this part. Okay, enough talking. Let's see this in action. Adjust the budget. You can see that the market is in fact trying to lowering the price, processing all the decision making for this lower price, and magically we are at the equilibrium. This is the prices went down from 6 something to 3.5 for a red berry, with the result that demand is now exactly equal to supply. And you can now follow the economy in full swing. This may look rich visually, but it's very simple. All these entrepreneurs are following their algorithm, doing the cost-benefit analysis, deciding how much to produce. The price has adjusted, so the demand equals supply, and we are now in a nice equilibrium. So we don't expect things to change much at this point. We expect things to be pretty steady. You can see in the little graph underneath the red berry price that there was a dip in price when we went from 6 to 3, and now it's stabilizing around $3. And that's what we expect the long-term market to look like. Look also, labor supply is fixed at 120 units of work. You can think about them as working hours in a day, for example, and this is the demand. So we had enough supply of worker to just meet the demand for workers for the entrepreneurs, and now we have a nice steady equilibrium. If you look at, so you can speed up time in this case. Always keep an eye on your benchmark here. You gotta be ahead of the benchmark when this period ends, or otherwise it's instant game over. And again, look up here to see what is the objective of the level. You don't need to get at least 18 happiness to pass this level and get 100% of the scenario points, which will then translate into your course marks. You can see the full economy in action here, people exchanging money, everything according to plan. And the market is stable and nothing else changes. This is a perfect example of a perfectly competitive market in a free market economy. If you look at this graph here, I'm going to show you here, the calendar, and you check market, and then you pick the red berry market, you can see what's happening. We had a situation initially where there was a big disparity between demand, this was demand initially, it was super high, and supply. And then thanks to the market equilibrium mechanism, you can see that demand and supply, they are now completely overlapping. So that's perfect equilibrium. And if you look at the price, well, the price actually decreased initially and then got onto a steady state, which is exactly what we observe in real life. That decrease in price made possible for the equilibrium to arise. And actually, I didn't do too bad at all. If you get to this point, remember to claim your rewards. If you need more information, click on the question mark. And this is all for this level. We want to send an important message here. Prices can change when we are in a perfectly competitive market where the prices are decided by individual firms and consumers. This model is capturing the fact that whenever there is an excess supply, there is an incentive for producers to reduce the price and become more competitive. And when the price and when there is excess demand, meaning the price is too high, there is more demand than supply, then there is an incentive for consumers to be willing to pay a higher price, which put upward pressure on the price. And by changing this way, the market is reducing the excess demand or excess supply, and finally reaches an equilibrium. The other thing that's important in the context of our game is that we introduced the idea of the algorithm or bot creation. You have created an artificial intelligence that was following some basic economic concepts to create an algorithm that would adapt production depending on the current prices on the market. Very well then, it's time to move to the next scenario, back to the main menu, and onto the next scenario, which is this one, City Prologue 3, demand and supply. This one is a very interesting one. Again, I'm gonna let you have a read at what's going on here. There are very funny dialogues, but they're also slowly, as you move through the map, they're slowly giving you all the concepts that you need. We prefer to do it this way pedagogically. You walk through town, instead of giving you a long slate of tests, we break down this information into a journey that you do through town, and hopefully that will allow you to absorb the information a little bit more. The story in this level is that you did so well as helping the producers in the previous couple of levels that the population elected you as the region's president, the mayor. Very well, now you are the president and you can go around and do things that you have powers that you didn't have before. As you can see, we are building more and more towards the city builder gameplay, and I promise at the end of this there's gonna be a gameplay that will feel like a usual video game to you. This is the old mayor. Here this wizard is telling us a little bit about the role of government, and is talking about government intervention and policy. So have a read at this because it's useful, and just explore a little bit as you proceed into this level. For the sake of expedience, but also because I don't want to spoil this too much, I'm just gonna go ahead pretty quickly. This is, as I was mentioning in week 2, what we've seen so far is a perfectly competitive market where we have all those characteristics of the perfectly competitive market being satisfied. Buyers and sellers are price taking, the good is homogeneous, there is full information, there are no externalities. All of those concepts also apply to this level here. What we have here is the introduction of the idea of government policy. Very well, government policy is essentially the ability of government to influence price and other things that pertain to the economy. A free market has no government policy. A completely pure free market has no government policy, whereas a centralized market or a planned market is a system where, for example, the government is deciding the price at which things are sold in the market, among other things. The government can also decide how much is produced, and depending on how centralized the market is. But in this particular level, the power that you have as the mayor, as the president of this region, is to set prices. In the previous one, we saw how the perfectly competitive market worked. The prices were changed automatically by the market itself, which is this toggle here. And in this level, instead, we are gonna activate, we have the option of activating this policy, which will allow you to set the price. Let me show you how that works. So if you are in this toggle here, which you can now press, the market will be centralized. You will be able to manually set the price for each good, and you will have to confirm when you are ready for the market cycle to begin. So the economy is literally waiting for you to make that executive decision. How do you make it? You press on this little icon, the little temple, the government temple, and you can see that we have many policies here, including taxes, subsidies, price ceiling. This is for another week. For this week, we are just gonna focus on the ability of the government to set the price. In a centralized economy, that's exactly what happens, and it is true in the world. There aren't many centralized economies left. Almost all of them switched to some form of free market, but it's important to analyze the question: could the government, by setting the prices manually, achieve more happiness for society than what the market could achieve through the independent decision making of individuals, buyers and sellers, like we saw in the previous scenario? Here the objective, as usual, is to catch up with the happiness of this benchmark, get as much happiness per capita as possible. So your role is to try to understand, is there a market price that may be better than the market price that we would get in a perfectly competitive free market? All right, let's think about how we could do this. You have a graph here, right here. You can turn it on. It will show you the quantity demanded and quantity supplied as you change the price. Let me just do a quick switch now to the slides. I want to just highlight a couple of things. So when we talk about demand and supply aggregation, when you want to aggregate the demand and supply in an economy, you just need to sum up the individual supply, quantity supplied and quantity demanded. In this level, you can see this very clearly, because look at this, consumers. These are the number of red berries that they want to consume. So this is their demand currently, and this is the demand of the other consumer. So if you want, oh, actually, I'm gonna have to move my iPad. Sorry about that. Put it there for a moment. I was saying this is the quantity demanded by this consumer, and this is the quantity demanded at this given price, which is currently $3 for red berries for this particular consumer. If you want to figure out the aggregate demand, you have to sum up the demand of this demand with this demand for these two agents, and you're gonna get the aggregate demand. In terms of supply, let me move this further down again. In terms of supply, you can see here that we have only one producer. So the quantity supplied is equal to the amount of red berries that you can see here. You can see then here we have 4 quantity supplied. This is the quantity that the producer is willing to supply, and you can see it here 4. And 31 is the quantity demanded, which is the sum of this pile of red berries here and the other pile of red berries here. Fantastic. Very well. So in a situation like this, you can have a quick look at the quantity demanded, just by looking at the game world, quantity demanded and also the quantity supply. And if you want the aggregate demand or supply, you can just sum up. And in this case, it's easy to calculate the aggregate supply because we have only one supplier, so the quantity supplied in this case is 4. You don't need to sum it up with anybody else. Very well. Another important concept is the concept of excess supply and excess demand. We have been talking about this. Excess supply is a situation where the quantity supplied is larger than the quantity demanded, and the excess demand is a situation where the quantity demanded is larger than the quantity supplied. And you can see in this example right here that the quantity supplied is 4, quantity demanded is 31. So there is definitely some excess demand at play here. In general, we say that the market equilibrium, the equilibrium that the free market would achieve naturally, is one in which the quantity supplied is equal to the quantity demanded. But is that the best outcome for society? Well, this level is exactly designed to make you think about that and explore that concept a little bit more. Very well. I'm going to talk about the market equilibrium in a second. Let's dive into what you can do about this situation in the market. Well, I can change the price right here. And as I do that, you can observe changes in the quantity demanded and quantity supplied. So let me go back to the previous one, 4 and 31. Now let me increase the price. Well, that makes it more enticing for an entrepreneur to produce, and it's also slowing down demand a little bit. Very well. Notice that as soon as I do this, as soon as I change the price a little bit, you're going to see that we have this algorithm, these bots, hard at work thinking about how they should change their behavior based on what just happened. What just happened when you change the price. We have built, in the previous scenario, we have really showed you how this algorithm works by showing exactly what was the decision making of the entrepreneur. And here you can see that in action. As I change the price, the type of decision the entrepreneur is making is changing. In this case, look, I am increasing the quantity demanded, the price, sorry, and you can see that my entrepreneur is producing more and more red berries. If I decrease the price, my entrepreneur is producing less and less. My entrepreneur is doing this less and less as I decrease the price. My entrepreneur is doing this because for example, the price at which they can sell become lower, their cost-benefit principle analysis suggests them that they should produce less, and that's correct if their objective is to maximize profit. As the price goes down, there is more and more demand, as you can see here, for those goods by consumers. So this is a really bad situation in terms of excess demand. Let me see what I can do. For example, I could increase this a little bit, right? Just like that. In this particular level, I cannot control the workers here. I can only control the price of red berries. We are keeping this really, really simple. The interesting thing is that I can open, at any point in time, I can open my demand and supply graph. Let me show you how this works. So I'm going to just increase the price a little bit. And you can see here that in this graph, I can see the price that I'm setting. And also I'm seeing the aggregate quantity supplied, which is the red curve, and the aggregate quantity demanded, which are just this number here, plotted in the graph. In what I think is a very familiar for you demand and supply graph. So let me increase it a little bit more to $6. You can see that as I increase, the quantity supply tends to increase and the quantity demanded tends to decrease. Let me increase even more. You can see that now they're getting really similar, and increase it even more. So look, I just want to explain this graph because it's so important. This graph is simply plotting what you see here. At price 9, which is here, this line is price 9, we have 13 supply and 5 demand. So supplies is 13, you can check it on the graph, and demand is 5. The more I increase the price, the bigger the distance. Demand is getting smaller and smaller, and supply is getting, well, at a certain point, supply actually gets constant. See here? is constant. And this is because the budget of the entrepreneur is constant. They have $50. So at a certain point, when production increases enough, they don't have enough money to actually increase production. They might want, but they don't have enough cash to start up the business to the level that they would like. And this entails that at a certain point, supply becomes very inelastic, like this. It becomes a vertical line. No matter how much you increase the price, the quantity that they can produce is bounded by the amount of cash that they have. So they cannot really expand production any further than that. Demand instead continues to fall down. And the reason why demand gets smaller and smaller, look at this, demand is now only 4, is because as the price goes up, there is what we call an income effect. So let me actually show you the slide for this. This is what we call an income effect, right there. The income effect captures the changes in the quantity demanded of a given good following the reduction in the consumer purchasing power. If a good, a red berry, becomes more expensive, the consumer that has a certain budget will be able to buy less of it. It is because, relatively speaking, their purchasing power has diminished as the price of red berry increased. Imagine if the red berries are super expensive. You might not even be able to buy one with your budget. The budget of the consumer, for example, for a worker, you can see it here, is $50. So if the red berries becoming too expensive, they will be able to buy only a few of them. And this is what we call an income effect. Very well. And here we are also thinking about a couple of other very important concepts that you've probably heard a lot when you were studying economics. The first one was the price elasticity of demand, represent the percentage change in the quantity demanded resulting from a very small percentage change in price. In other words, in English, in a way that is way more understandable, it's the responsiveness of demand to changes in price. As you change the price here, you can see that demand is now going down to 3. If I change the price a little bit more, demand might go even lower, following this graph essentially. And this is the responsiveness of demand to changes in price. So price elasticity is simply this, how responsive the demand is to change in prices. And of course, we have a little bit of jargon here, but it may be helpful, so I'm just going to point it out very quickly. We say that demand is elastic when the elasticity is greater than 1, unit elastic when it's equal to 1, and inelastic when it's less than 1. Just a little bit of jargon in case we need this further on. And similarly, we have the same logic for price elasticity of supply. It's the result of a change, a percentage change in the quantity supplied resulting from a very small change in price. So you do like a small marginal change in price and have a look at the quantity supplied, right? Quantity supplied goes from 13. So let me get out of the inelastic part of the supply curve. Here, when it's become elastic, see, when I reduce the price even just a little bit, I get a change in the quantity supplied. So the responsiveness of the quantity to change in prices is called price elasticity. And we define elastic supply, unit elastic supply, and inelastic supply just as we did for demand. A little bit of concepts and a little bit of terminology so that we can be on the same page when it comes to analyzing this level. Very well. Now, just by trying different prices, as you can see here, I am drawing the supply and demand curve. And that happens because all these agents are, when the price changes, thinking about how they should change their consumption and production decision. Now, the real good question here is, what is the optimal, the optimal price for society? For example, let's consider this price 3.50. Well, supply is not great. There is only 6 units supply, and there is an excess demand. The demand is 25. Let's have a look at the graph here. You can see it very clearly. Supply is low at this price, and demand is pretty high here. But sometimes governments, they argue that consumers would benefit from a low price, and hence sometimes government intervenes by setting prices and forcing the market to sustain some excess, like an excess demand in this case. And the rationale is, well, we are trying to help consumers by keeping the price low. The question, of course, is this really helping consumers? And the answer is a little more delicate than you might think, and I'm not going to spoil it too much because I want everybody to have a chance to play this level and make up their own mind. But I will just touch upon it for a second maybe by introducing a couple of concepts here. One is the concept of reservation price of a buyer, which is the highest they're willing to pay for a given good, and the reservation price of a seller, which is the lowest price they're willing to accept for a given good. Now, let me just tell you what that means in practice. Let me draw your typical supply and demand graph. Very well. So this is the classic one, okay? You're going to see this a lot if you are studying economics. Very well. Something like this. Fantastic. You have here the price of red berries in dollars, so dollars per unit of red berries, and here you have the quantity, units of red berries. Let's have a look at that graph where, like, for example, let's take the first unit, the first red berry. You have that supply is relatively low at, let's see. Let me actually go down to $1 and let's see what this is. Oh, supply is actually 0. So let's maybe, let's go to the point where they are producing at least 1 unit. Actually, I cannot quite do this here because it's jumping to 3 units, but let's just follow the logic. So we have the first unit, and suppose that supply for the first unit produced is equal to 1, just as an example. So this is the first point on the supply curve. And also imagine that up here we have demand, which may be equal to, let's say, completely made up example, 5 units. Very well. So, and of course, you have your demand curve, as we see in the graph there, that could go like this, decreasing, and your supply curve that could be like in our example here, increasing and also becoming inelastic at a certain point like this. Now, the definition of a reservation price for consumers and sellers is the following. Take this graph and start from this quantity, so the first unit that is produced. This could be interpreted as the minimum amount of price that producers are willing to accept in order to produce the unit. This is the minimum price. $1 would be the minimum price they're willing to accept. This is one interpretation of the supply curve, what we call the vertical interpretation. And from the perspective of consumers instead, you have to, if you want to figure out what is the reservation price, you need to go up, up, up until you touch the demand curve. And this is the reservation price for consumer. For the first unit, the maximum consumers are willing to pay is $5. So when you have the first red berry that you have produced, you've got 1 red berry in your hands, just like that. You know from this demand graph a lot of information. You know that producers would not be willing to sell this red berry unless the price is $1 or above, and consumer would not be willing to purchase this red berry unless the price is less than $5. So any price in between will allow for a successful trade where everyone can benefit it. The suppliers are saying at least $1, that's my reservation price, and consumers are saying no more than $5, this is my reservation price. There is space in between these two prices for an optimal transaction to take place. That's what we call a Pareto efficient transaction in economics, where everybody is better off by doing that trade. In fact, let's assume for a moment that we are in a perfectly competitive market and the equilibrium price is in fact the price such that demand equals supply, right? This price here, which let's just say, completely making numbers up now, is equal to $3. So this is the market equilibrium where demand equals supply. At this price, we have seen this concept before, but it's worth going over this again. At this particular price, the distance between the reservation price for consumers and the actual price that they are paying in the market is their surplus. And for producers, similarly, the difference between the price they are actually paying, which is in this case just imagine $3, the market equilibrium price, and the reservation price, which is $1. So the green area here represents the happiness, the surplus that consumers receive when they buy the first unit of blueberries at $3, the black market price. And the red line represents the surplus for the producers. The difference between the price they cash in, $3 in this case, the black line, and their reservation price. The difference is what we call the surplus of a transaction. Let me also define these two concepts. The consumer surplus represents the difference between what the consumer pays, so the market price, for a good and what they are willing to pay, their reservation price. And producer surplus, again, the difference between the price a seller receives for a good from the market, so the market price, and what they're willing to receive, which is their reservation price. We also talked a little bit, if you sum up the consumer surplus for all consumers and the producer surplus for all consumers, you obtain the total consumer surplus and the total producer surplus. If you sum them up, you obtain the total surplus. In our case, the total surplus would be the sum of the distance, the red area here, and the green area. If you calculate the surplus at every production point, like 2 or 3, and then you sum everything up, you obtain this whole area here, representing the consumer surplus when the market price is $3 in this very silly example that I've made. So this is just an example to show you the concept. So the area beneath the demand curve and above the price becomes the total consumer surplus, and the area above the supply curve and below the price line becomes the supplier surplus. I'm doing all this exercise really talking about consumer and producer surplus because your decision here is trying to figure out what is the price that maximizes happiness for society. That's the objective of the level. You are playing against the benchmark down here, which forces you to try to get as much happiness as possible for the whole economy. And happiness and total surplus, they're very, very similar concepts. Happiness is measured in utils and total surplus is measured in dollars, but they represent the same thing. They represent the happiness that society is realizing through the market, one expressed in dollars, the other expressed in some happiness measure. The objective here is going to be to try to figure out what is the price that can make everybody, total surplus, total society happiness, as big as possible. Very well, I may add just one little thing before moving on. We have talked about the concept of Pareto efficiency just a second ago. Pareto efficiency is a situation in which it's possible to make an individual better off without making at least one other. It's a situation in which it's impossible to make an individual better off without making at least one other individual worse off. So it's a situation where you cannot find a better allocation of goods in the economy that could make one person happier without harming someone else. Let's have a look at what this means, like super quickly again, when we think about demand and supply. So imagine this is the price of a good, this is the quantity. Again, this is the first unit of red berries that someone is consuming, and imagine that supply is here. So let's say again, $1 is the reservation price for suppliers, and this is the reservation price for consumers, which is $5. So let's think about, is producing zero Pareto efficient? So if producing zero is Pareto efficient, it means that there is no way to increase happiness for someone in society without harming someone else. Well, clearly zero quantity is not Pareto efficient, because moving from zero quantity to 1 unit produced and consumed is actually making both suppliers and consumers better off. Imagine again that the price, the equilibrium price is 3. So this is the equilibrium price. At this equilibrium price, consumers would be making a surplus, so consumer surplus would be equal to $2 worth of consumer surplus, and producer surplus would be equal to $1. So if they exchange that first red berry, consumers would experience an increase in happiness which is equal to $2, the difference between the reservation price and the market price, and producers would also make a producer surplus equal to $2, which is the difference between the reservation price and the market price. Hence, moving from 0 to 1 unit sold and traded in this market is Pareto efficient. So sorry, it's Pareto. It's a Pareto improving transaction, which really means that being stuck at zero production is not a Pareto efficient situation, because there is a way to make both of them, both consumer and suppliers, better off. That's exactly the definition of a Pareto improving transaction that make all parties involved better off. The invisible hand principle is a principle that states that individuals making independent decisions, trying to maximize selfishly their own gains, profit for sellers, happiness, utility for buyers, will generally be beneficial for society and result in the socially optimal allocation of resources. This is to say that, according to this theory, the free market could, which is just letting sellers and buyers make their own mind, is leading to an equilibrium that is in fact optimal for everybody. This is another piece of the puzzle. This is the invisible hand, right? And it's particularly applied in situations where we have a perfectly competitive market like the one we have here. So theory suggests that markets could be actually pretty good at maximizing total surplus. But don't take the word of economists on this. Try out and try to look for yourself. If there is a price, look at what I'm doing here, for example, just changing that price around. Is there a price here that is not the market equilibrium, the free market equilibrium price, that could actually improve society's well-being? To just wrap up this concept, I would like to show you one last graph and just give you an idea of what happens whenever the market is in a situation that is not such that there is no excess demand or excess supply. So let me draw another. So suppose you pick a price like the one that I have here currently in the game. Have a look at this. Currently in the game, I have, so this is the supply, this is the demand, and I'm not in equilibrium. I have an excess demand. So let's say this is supply, this is demand, and say that you decide to set a price like this one, this price, I'm going to call it P star, where the quantity supplied is given by this point, quantity supplied, and quantity demanded is given by this point here. In this case, we have what we call an excess demand. This is all excess demand, more quantity demanded than quantity supplied. In terms of what happens in the market at this point, is that because demand is smaller than supply, you're going to have that the market is truncated here. So this is the amount that consumers are going to be willing to consume. Hence, you're going to have a situation where the economy will not exchange more than, this is the maximum that suppliers are willing to produce, So this is the maximum that will be produced in the economy. We are never going to produce what consumers want because it's too much. Suppliers are not willing to do it. In this case, at this particular price, truncated here, the consumer surplus would be given by the area below the demand curve and above the price line, so this area, and the producer surplus is going to be given by the area above the supply curve and below that price line that you set as a measure. This area represents the total consumer surplus, the red one, and total producer surplus, the yellow one. If you combine the two, you get a measure of the total happiness in the economy. The question for you is, would it be better to increase the price from here, decrease the price? Would that affect happiness overall? How do I optimize this level? Well, this is entirely up to you. It's a very important economic question, and I think at this point you have all the ingredients to answer it. Let me confirm my decision. I am hereby confirming that I am going to set the price equal to 4 for this market. At this price, we're going to have a supply equal to 6 and demand equal to 22. I thought in my capacity as mayor of this economy that this is an optimal amount for my society. Let's confirm. As soon as I click confirm, the market starts and things are beginning to happening. I can close this UI for now. Producers are producing the 6. They are gonna put them in storage and then put them on the trade table. Consumers are gonna go, and you can see that this consumer and also this one is left without the amount of red berries that they want. There is a lot more demand at that price. Now they're asking me again, do you want to change this price? And click confirm when you're ready, so I can modify this price. But let's say that I'm happy with my $4. It feels like I'm helping producers, maybe by keeping the price high, even if it could be a policy, right? It would not be unheard that governments made this kind of assessment, that they wanted to keep the price high to facilitate producers. But is this really maximizing total surplus and total happiness in the economy? Again, a question that you should be able to analyze at this point. Now I can click confirm, waiting again, and the market is going to start again. People are going to produce. And again, these consumers are asking a lot. They're not going to get what they want. That's unfortunate, but there is not enough demand for them. See, this guy wants more and more, and every turn he gets richer because his worker is working, and the entrepreneur maybe is making a profit, but they just cannot get to consume that. Now, if you don't want to click confirm over and over and over again, you can use this little trick and select this one. In this mode, the market will still be centralized, so the prices are not going to adjust independently from you. So they're going to be sticky at these prices that you set manually. But you won't have to press this confirm button over and over again. So if I click this toggle, I can just relax a little bit. I don't have to press confirm all the time, and I can just let the economy go. I can speeding our time now. Look at the demand, it's getting worse and worse. Very well. Now the prices are fixed at the amount I wanted, but I don't have to confirm every time. And finally, a little final trick for you. If you instead thought, well, you know what, I think the free market is pretty good at setting the optimal prices and I don't want to set this manually, you could revert to the free market pricing system. In this mode, the market will be decentralized. The market will automatically balance itself using the rules that I explained in the previous scenario. So let me click this and see what happens. In this case, let's wait until the next market cycle, see what's going on. Yep, the market is going automatically now, asking people what they think. You can even see here, you can see a log of what the entrepreneur is thinking, which we think it's really helpful. Basically seeing their mental process as they go through the algorithm that we have explored in the previous scenario, how to build. Here you can see it in action, and you can actually see step by step what the entrepreneur is thinking, which is a way for us to facilitate the explanation of how this automated behavior are conforming with the demand and supply model. All right, so I actually failed to reach the benchmark, so my happiness is pretty low. The top score here is 5, so you have to reach 5 in order to get full marks on this one. You have seen 3 ways to handle this market. You can centralize it, decide the price, and then confirm every time. You can centralize, decide the price, but then let the market iterate cycle after cycle automatically. And finally, you have the option of just delegate all this decision making to the free market by clicking this other option here. And this was a close look at 2 new scenarios. And you can see that even if the game looks pretty simple and leisurely, it's actually capturing all the relevant concepts that you would study in an economics class. And these concepts are pretty simple. They're based on decision making that consumers or sellers are making, and how this decision making process changes when we change the prices in the market. And most importantly, how these prices that are determined in the market can really affect how happy a society is. Hence, it's super important to understand whether the government can do something to help and under what conditions this help could be helpful in terms of making the world a better place, a happier place. Never give for granted that the system as it is now, as it works nowadays outside of that window, how the economy is triggered and advances, is necessarily the best way to think about a society. There could be better ways, and so it's important to explore them. Up to this point, remember, all the results that you're seeing from the simulation, from the game, are based on the idea of a perfectly competitive market, but very soon we are going to start breaking some of those assumptions and see, when we move away from a perfectly competitive market, whether our suggestions in terms of policy and organization of society might end up changing. See you later. Bye-bye, everybody.